You are listening to Blue Please, you're on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. Now, before I go on, a brief mention, a brief shout-out as requested. I'm feeling benevolent today. Yes. Harold, are you awesome? No, you are not. You are not awesome. You are pilfering. You are pathetic. You are horrendous. You are begging for shout-outs. And you know what happens when you beg for shout-outs on my show? Ha! Morons! Well, let's get on with it, shall we? Stuff the Murloc back in his box for the time being. May unleash him later, we shall see. Now, so this patch apparently also has raiding in it. I've just been informed this. I'm surprised that nobody told me. Up until now, I was told that all that was in it was a mage icon. So, hey, apparently not. Right. Let's get on with it, shall we? Ice Crown. It's got raiding in it. It's also got Firebands in it, but we'll talking about that a little bit later on in the show. Now, the raid content. I'm going to talk for the next 15 minutes about this. There's way more I can talk about. You can expect this particular raid to feature heavily over the next few shows. I'll be giving you updates as we kill the bosses and telling you about the bosses if you haven't been in there already. And more importantly, analysing the design decisions behind the instance and the continuing changes that are happening. There have already been some changes made. One of which, in fact the main one, I really do not agree with at all. So, Ice Crown is that new raid in Ice Crown, shockingly enough. And it's shockingly grim. Oh yes, it's grim, dark, and indeed dark, grim. Now, there's various issues with this. I doubt I'll have enough time to cover all of them. So, I'm just going to talk about the bosses today. We can talk about the gating on the next show. There's a lot to talk about with the gating. Loads of stuff to talk about. But that can wait. We'll talk about that on the next show. So, let's just talk about the bosses and focus on the actual raid content that we've got going on here. Now, in the release of this particular wing, as they're calling it, of Ice Crown, you have 4 bosses. You've got Lord Marigar, Lady Death Whisper, the Airship Battle, and Deathbringer Sourfang. Those are your 4 bosses. And you've also got quite a bit of trash. And that's actually the first thing I'd like to mention about this. Trash. Oh, I don't get why Blizzard can never seem to strike the right balance in 2 instances in a row. Yeah? You look at Ulduar, yeah? Ulduar's trash is basically perfect. It's the most perfect trash in terms of how much of it there is, on how much variety of trash there is, and in how difficult it generally is. It's generally pretty interesting. There are exceptions. Say, for instance, the Freya room, even now, is still got way too much trash in it. But generally speaking, the raid is pretty solid in terms of how it's paced. And then you've got heroic TOC, well, just TOC in general, i.e. the Colosseum, the big circle where you fight bosses and get loot. There's no trash in that whatsoever. Now, some people will argue that trash is pointless, but I believe it does serve a purpose. If all you do is fire boss after boss after boss, then you've got an issue where the raid is too short, for one thing. And I don't know, it just doesn't feel like a dungeon if it doesn't have trash in it. People get annoyed by trash because trash isn't a boss, trash isn't interesting. But I think trash is interesting if done in the correct way. It's got to have enough abilities to make it interesting. It's got to be sufficiently random and not predictable to make sure that you can't just blitz your way through it by AoEing. And it's got to be difficult. Now, the trash in Ice Crown, some of it is quite tricky. Some of it isn't. There are certain... Let me put it this way. There's only one way to say this. There are certain dick moves in the pulls up to Lord Marigar. First dick move. You can see Lord Marigar from the start, and you think, oh great, It's not going to be too much. Just a few packs, we get to fight the first boss. Oh, no. No, no, no. You remember Shattered Halls? You remember how they just kept coming, wave after wave after wave, and just stood there in front of you? Yeah, enjoy that in a raid form. Oh, my... I was spitting feathers by the time we got to Lord Marigar. Admittedly, we took a little bit too long, and I think we could clear it... The 10-man version, I think we could clear it to Lord Marigar in half an hour, but that's still half an hour of trash. And always with the boss in sight. It's like you're moving forward a couple of inches. Oh, look, new waves! Second dick move. There are random Colossi-style things that are in the walls that spawn at certain points. Some of the time when you're fighting. Kind of annoying. You can reset them if you know what you're doing, but I never really like to exploit the trash. It always feels like it shouldn't have been done that way. The first time that popped on us, we ended up with a full pack, which is hard enough to begin with. Then that, and we ended up wiping horribly. Not very pleasant. In terms of the trash itself, there's a good variety of abilities on show, and it's pretty challenging. That's good. That's how trash should be in a tier 10 instance. Is there too much of it? Yes. Undoubtedly. I would think that some of it will get removed from the start, to be quite honest. I think Old War had it right, in terms of how much trash there was, and this just doesn't. It's funny, because that's the only bit of the instance so far that suffers from that. The pulls from Marigar to Death Whisper are totally reasonable. That, and you've also got some really nice trash on Death Whisper. It's a lot of fun to do. We actually ended up wiping a couple of times on this single mob, just to add some great cool abilities, and it did some really nasty stuff. That was good. I had flashbacks of Black Temple there. Trash that can kill you. What a shocker. You can't AoE it. Oh no. That was good. The trash on the way to the airship battle, it's fine. The trash on the way to the airship battle is sort of a mixture of normal trash and the kind of thing that you would expect to find in, say, the Faction Champions battle. You've got themed mobs that all do abilities that you expect to find in PvP. So that's kind of nifty. It's not hard, though, by any stretch. It's like, hey, counterspell the healer, then nuke them. That's really all there is to it. There's not a lot there. It's a good amount, and it's pretty interesting. And there's no trash in between Deathbringer Salfang and the airship battle. So that's the whole wing in terms of trash. Now let's have a look at the bosses. You've got Lord Marigar. He's the first guy. There's a few things that I really like about this fight. The first thing is, it's a throwback encounter. As in, it seems to be deliberately designed to give a lot of nostalgia to old guard raiders. Because all of the mechanics are basically stolen from TBC. And a little bit from AQ40 as well. This guy is a mixture of Leothorus and Gentis and a little bit of Archimond in there. He can do a spinny thing, which kills lots of people if you stand in it. He can do a spiky thing, which will kill somebody if you do not, in fact, get them out of the spike. Now, instead of picking the spike up, you've got to DPS the spike, and you get rid of it. It's actually called Bone Spike Graveyard, which is, in fact, those of you who've played Prototype, a direct reference to Prototype. Same ability, Bone Spike Graveyard. He's also got a little bit of... what's her name? I can never remember it. Why? That stupid boss from Black Temple with the Saber Lash. It's gone out of my head. I have this problem remembering that boss. I don't know why it is. Maybe it's just blanked from my memory now. Possibly. Whatever the case, yeah, it's the ability taken from there as well. So, pretty solid. I wouldn't call it massively challenging, but it's a good first boss. The problem is that there was something that we really liked in there, and gave us this other idea that it was really a throwback to old-style raids, because it had a untauntable aspect to it. As in, it had aggro management. Crazy! We haven't seen that in ages. So yeah, a bit of aggro management. That was good, but then they removed that, because apparently that was unintended, so they made him tauntable again. So no aggro management! Right, okay. Why? Why nerf the first boss like that? Why teach people bad habits again? I don't get it. hey, you brought back a boss where you have to manage your threat. And indeed, that's actually a bit of a theme. You've got to do that in Death Whisper as well. So why suddenly say, okay, here's the I win button, you can just taunt it? I remember a lot of bosses being untauntable, and yes, you had to watch your aggro, you had to watch your threat. This is not an encounter that would deliberately, say, get in your way. I mean, Death Whisper has certain aspects regarding managing your threat, but Marigar, it really doesn't. It's not got a mechanic that would disallow having the boss be untauntable. There's nothing that really clashes there. I don't see the problem. We killed him pre-nerf. I'm happy about that. But yeah, pretty solid fight. Again, please stop nerfing the bosses. It's good as it is, Blizz. Get it into your heads. It's the final instance. It's supposed to be hard. Even on normal mode, it's supposed to be pretty challenging. To be honest, though, in our experience, particularly with Death Whisper, I think that this is going to trip up quite a lot of pugs and scrubs, and I'm fine with that. I am absolutely fine with that. So let's move on to Lady Death Whisper. She's got some great mechanics. In fact, to be honest, I think Lady Death Whisper was the boss we were most impressed with. She's pretty challenging. You've got to really burn her down pretty hard. The first phase involves a mana shield, which you have to get rid of, but she also spawns adds, and these adds are lethal. They are really nasty. She can do all sorts of crazy things with those, and they have various abilities that really shake it up. Say, for instance, you've got guys with Magic Reflect, Magic Resistance, you've got the ability to reanimate these adds into ones that are way more powerful. Well, that's very nice as well. There's some spell stealing in there, which I pretty much approve of as a mage. Dark Empowerment, which causes area damage with spells, all manner of things. It's nice to have a fight again where you have to manage adds and also have to manage the boss as well. Think of Kel'Thuzad, but back when Kel'Thuzad wasn't nerfed into the ground, when those adds were actually challenging. Whereas now, and indeed at the start of Wrath, it was a complete walk in the park. This is a lot better. This is way better designed in terms of the way that the adds work and they function and go after the raid. So yeah, that's very nice indeed. And the second phase is pretty challenging. You've got stacking threat generation reduction debuff. Again, gotta manage your aggro. Please don't nerf that. Please. It's nice to have to manage aggro again. That's an old-school raiding skill that should be back in World of Warcraft, and I hope that that is a harbinger of what's going to be coming for us in Cataclysm. I really do. There is no threat reset in the transition between Phase 1 and Phase 2. So all of that threat that you've been gathering while DPSing the hell out of her, yeah, about that. Watch out for it. It's going to be interesting indeed. It's nice. It's a lot of fun. Probably my favourite boss in there. Now, a brief mention of the gunship battle before we go to the break. It's the gimmick battle, let's be honest here. Does it have a place? Yes. Is it fun as hell? Yes. Is it a total gimmick and way too easy, at least on 10 man? Yes, it is. But it's got jetpacks, so I can basically forgive everything. No, seriously, I can. I can forgive absolutely everything. There's actually a very nifty mechanic in there as well that caught us out the first time. As we went in there without really any idea about the strategy, and a vague overview, and we jumped over and did some stuff on the other thing, and then we suddenly realized that the enemy boss was killing us all. We're like, well, how do we deal with this? And the answer was right under our noses. You're not supposed to stay on the ship very long. You get over there, kill the mage, and then jetpack back to your airship before the stacking damage buff on Muradin will kill you all. That's neat. Very neat. I think the entire fight is really neat. It's a great use of mechanics, turrets. It's great fun, but again, it is quite easy. Now, in terms of the difficulty, well, again, we did it on 10-man normals. So I'm expecting the 10-man hards to be a lot harder. But hey, we're going to have to wait like 3 months for that. So it's not like I can judge it on there. Sourfang's supposed to be a bit of a jump in difficulty. We had a little bit of a try on him. He seems pretty interesting. I'll be able to report back to you on that because we're trying him on Saturday. So I can talk about that on next week's show. Except there won't be one next week because it's Christmas. It'll be the New Year's show I'll talk about that on. Overall, though, a good solid start. I wouldn't call it the saviour of raiding and a grand return to the old ways. There are some green shoots, let's just say. Some really nicely designed encounters. It's not perfect. It's flawed, but it's pretty good. So we'll see how it goes. If it gets a lot better after the first wing, then I'll be very, very, very happy indeed. In terms of the gating, I'm not going to talk about that until next show. There's a lot to say on that. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. I will be right back after the break to tell you a little bit about looking for group. Enjoy.